Welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and if you're wondering why the brightness looks a little bit different, it's because I had to turn it down to 0 because with the vibrance that SweetFX offers, on this map which has a lot of sand and sun, it was like staring at the sun. It was absolutely horrendous, so I've had to make a few changes to the brightness for this one, and it looks okay, so I'm happy enough to continue with this. And this is going to be a 2-battle thing because Kuro, who is of course one of the two who I think first made Reforged. It was him and Sin, I believe, and Timo has kind of joined them as the 3 main people who develop Reforged, as it were. And he organised an infantry-only battle, so there is no cavalry and there is no archers in this. And this is pretty good, because in a pitch battle like this, obviously Dry Lake Bed is a very flat map, and on this, the archers and the cavalry will always decide the battle in the current meta. There really is. Infantry is more of a bit part player. There are very few exceptions to that rule, and that's something which I think is a real shame. It's only really in sieges and choke point heavy maps where infantry truly gets to shine, and I hope that the next patch does change it a little bit, so that especially the cavalry, but the archers as well, are slightly less ridiculous. But we can only hope. But for this one, it's going to be mainly about formations, and it's going to be mainly about how you choose to advance and how you've chosen to sort of construct your line. Because most of the time in the current built meta, of course, a simple cav charge is enough to completely wipe away whatever tactics you may have had with your infantry. But regardless, it is going to be a 4v4, and there are a few things that I wanted to talk about with regards to a few individual units, and with how important teamwork can be, because of course that can decide the match more often than not. So we'll start off with my army, and I am playing as Harad, and I've got a front line of 4 Muhard Berserkers. I was hoping to be up against an armoured faction so I could get the charge of their shock damage off onto the front line, and then I'll quickly back them up. At least that was the initial idea. And then I'm backing them up with 4 units of Serpent Guard. Again, this is really the one unit in Harad's line that is designed fully around anchoring them, and 4 units of them are pretty difficult to dislodge. They're a pretty decent sort of mainline unit. They're probably a top 10, I would say, and I believe that I did give them, I think, the 10th spot, or maybe even the 9th spot back when I was doing the top 10 still, and I hope to be doing them pretty soon again. But yeah, they're pretty good, and they are pretty necessary for Harad in this sort of situation to anchor their line. And the other thing that I've got is 4 units of the South Run Pikemen. Most of the time people won't bring these because they're so vulnerable to arrows, but in this situation, of course, that is not going to be an issue, and they are AP. I believe they and the Loke Gamp Brim are the 2 units of Pikemen that boast armor-piercing damage, so with the Serpent Guard, these guys should make a very effective centre to my line. And then back here, of course, I've got 2 units of Trollmen of Harad. These guys, 3 HP. They have less in terms of melee defense than a lot of other high-tier infantry units. They're focused more around attack, but with that AP damage and with those 3 HP, they are still a big tour de force on the battlefield. And you can have 2 of them as well, and it is quite necessary for Harad to be successful in the current patch, because they do lack a little bit elsewhere. And if we look back here, I've got 2 units of the Southron Warband, AP Spears. Again, Harad have got a lot of AP, so I'm hoping to make use of them at some point in the battle. I've got 2 units of Haradrim Spearmen just to sort of pad out my line. I had an extra 300 left over. And then back here, I have got 2 units of the Hashari, and with no arrows and no cavalry, I was hoping these guys would really shine, because they are quite similar to Sindar Blade Masters, but they are more vulnerable and probably less cost effective overall in most situations. But here I was hoping to see them shine. And we'll go down the line in the matchups, I think. So facing off opposite me, we have Dar playing as Umbar, and again, this is the sort of situation where Umbar should really get to shine. Archers and cavalry are really their weakness, and in this sort of situation, their pretty damn impressive infantry line should be able to really lay down what they have to offer. And they've got, well, he's got some Castemirs chosen here on the flank. Up front, he's got a long line of Belagear Halberdiers, and then over here he's got the Abrazanim Narduzagar. Again, should be pretty good against my Haradrim units because they're not very well armoured. Same story with these Harbingers of Castamir, so again, Umbar in this situation are pretty well suited to fighting Harad, but the opposite is also true with all the AP Harad have. He's also got some Abrazanim Nadu Tariq. Low damage values and armour piercing means they won't be too effective against Harad, to be honest. And then back here, rounding off his army, he has of course got the Naru Naaru Royal Guard, where his general is at. So a pretty decent army, a lot of AP though, and both of us are going to struggle against certain aspects of each other's army. Moving on to the player that is right next to me, we have Crimson Behelit playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. He's gone wide as well, as you often do with the Orcs. He's got some Black Orcs of the mountains here on the flank. He's also got some heavy goblin infantrymen here in the centre. So of course you've got to do a swarm tactic as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains in this situation, and they should do pretty well at that. He's also got heavy goblin spears here in the middle for holding the centre down, and they are immediately backed up by the very scary Black Watch Legion. Some Black Uruk warband back here as well, with some Orc bodyguards, mountain trolls, snow trolls, and another unit of mountain trolls. And he's got the Blackback Berserkers somewhere, I'm sure. You'd be mad not to bring them with the current rules. And he's got some heavy goblin infantrymen as well, and then another unit of Black Uruks on the flank, so he's got his formation nice and sorted. And he will be facing off against the High Elves, played by Horsey Hawks YT. And he has got 2 units of Imladris Guards on the front line. They'll be very good at holding, so from the front they'll do very well, but he has got a small army, so he is going to be quite vulnerable to being overlapped by the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. We also have a unit of Mythalon Nobles over here. He's got some Elder Enway Spears, some Falas Lords, Imladris Storm Raiders, Swordsmen, so he's got a lot of attacking power in his army. He's also got some Imladris Stormguard and some Elder Enway Spears, but he is in a bit of a tricky situation because he is likely to be overlapped by the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. Now though, we shall have a look at the second Harad army, played by WK. He likes playing Harad, so do I, given the right situation, but he's much more, well, he's better with them than I am, let's put it that way. He's got a lot of Southron Warband on the front line. All of that AP is going to come in pretty handy, I would think. And of course they can form Spear Wall as well. And behind them he's got the Southron Pikemen, so he's got a lot of pole arms with AP. And just in behind them he has of course got the Trollmen of Harad. And just behind them some Haradrim Spearmen to pad out the army. So he's done a pretty similar thing that I've done. He's probably got some Hashari hidden somewhere as well. He's also got the Muhard Berserkers and the Serpent Guard on the flank. So he's gone for more Spearmen at the front line. So he's going to be able to hold out for longer. And hold out he will have to do because he is playing up against Bobo, who is playing as the Dwarves. He's got miners on the front lines. Of course, these guys are AP, not going to come in very handy against Harad, to be honest, so they're probably going to die off pretty quickly. But in behind them we have some of the more scary units, so we've got some Axemen of Erebor, Ironfoot Warriors. In this situation the Dwarves should really clean up with all of their very good infantry. He's got a line of Ironfoot Warriors, he's also got some Ironfoot Guard, which will be very good against Harad. And he's also got some Noblemen, the Guards of Khazad-dûm, the Mithril Guard, the Sons of Durin, and then over there on the flank he's got more Axemen of Erebor. He is a little bit vulnerable to being overlapped again with the smaller army size that he has brought, but we shall see. And then over here we have, playing as Lothlorien, we have Kura, of course, the one and only, and he's got some Sylvan Silver Spears on the front line, some Woodland Warriors for the AP, some Sylvan Axemen for the AP, and then moving backwards we have some Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen for the skill, some Sylvan Spearmen, and then back here some Sylvan Heavies, possibly some Sindar Blade Masters hidden around the place as well. And then finally, the final army, we have Von Mountain playing as the Woodland Realms. He's got some Forest Wardens, some Forest Bladesmen, a lot of Forest Bladesmen in fact, so the Elven Rumble here on the side, playing at the front line. And of course over here we have the single best infantry unit, the Elder Palace Guard, but there is only one of them, so vulnerable to being overwhelmed perhaps. Then over here he's got some Hiri Dirith on the sidelines. I'm surprised there's no Lang, although there are some Avari Elder Pikemen over here. So, without further ado, let us begin. Of course, both of these battles will be quite short, that's why I'm doing 2 in one video. Only 8,000 frames long, although the lag did make it in the actual battle take quite a while, so we have sort of the elves, they're going to be posturing against one another because of course lower army sizes, and Kuro is a little bit bottled up in that canyon over there. It looks like the Woodland Realms does want to help his ally a little bit, but the dwarves are going to be advancing forward, going to be meeting Harad head on, which is good to see. The elves are sort of moving over towards the dwarves to try and form up a defensive core to the army, but of course this means they're going to need to do this quickly before the Misty Mountains goes to them. Over here though, as I'm sure you've noticed, Umbar is running away. Now this is never a good idea because I can see what he was trying to do. He was trying to sort of form up on this hill, get the hill advantage, get a nice situation for himself there, but he's leaving his ally in the lurch, because if he does that I'm going to be able to sort of bottle him up, and I'm going to be able to send reinforcements over to help the Misty Mountains with the High Elves. And if you leave your allies high and dry, it's going to hurt you in the end, most of the time. Now if he turns around and he attacks me suddenly, that's a different story, but again, this sort of retreat is not going to work early on in the fight. But as we can see, elsewhere in the battle, the first clashes are beginning. The dwarves and Harad going up against one another. The Southron Warband will not beat the Ironfoot Warriors 1-1, but it's all about getting your value for money, and the dwarves are going to be vulnerable to being overlapped. The Southron Pikemen especially will be able to hold the dwarves in place, while the Muhard Berserkers and the Trollmen get in behind them and are going to be able to do some nasty shock damage if Bobo doesn't secure his flanks. Meanwhile, if we look over here, the elves are also getting into their fight, and we can see that Lothlorien sort of going a little bit wider, going to be stopping the advance of these Hiri Dirith. The armor piercing that these woodland warriors offer, not going to be too useful against the Hiri Dirith, to be honest with you, but the spearmen will hold them in place quite nicely, and the Sylvan heavy swordsmen I would think would beat the Dirith in melee. Although the Sylvan Axemen, again, their AP kind of wasted on the Woodland Realms. We've also got some Sylvan Staff Masters, though. They're going to be difficult to dislodge. So again, a very interesting clash we've got going on. It's going to come down to who can flank, who can push through. And we've also got some Sylvan Spearmen in reserve, and we can see the Sindar Blade Masters of Lothlorien are springing now, and they're going to be going around the flank, and they should be able to win on this flank against the Forest Bladesmen. And against, well, just Forest Bladesmen, in fact. The Sindar Blade Masters will have a big advantage over there, but the Woodland Patrol will do a decent job at sort of equalising that fight. Where did the Elder Palace Guard go, I wonder? Because wherever they are, here they are, yeah. The balance of force is evenly matched, unbelievably, but it is only them holding back a tide of Lothlorien troops. And we can see the Sylvan Axemen. So Lothlorien and the Woodland Realms sort of throwing themselves against one another, although the Woodland Realms also bringing Sindar Blade Masters. Both of them sort of gaining an advantage on one flank. And if we look over here, the Hashari of WK going to be going over to help his ally. The Hashari are a very, very deadly unit, and one unit of Sindar Blade Masters is not going to be sufficient to beat 2 units of Hashari. And you can see that the dwarves, they don't have enough men to stop Harad going around the flank. And particularly with, look at all of this, look at the denseness of the Harad front line. The dwarves are not going to be able to push through that, which would have been their big advantage, particularly if they were up against Lothlorien. Or myself, actually. I didn't bring as many pole arms as WK, and the Trollmen going up against the guards of Khazad-dûm. And as I said, the Misty Mountains just overrunning the front line of the High Elves. And you can see that because Dar did not advance forward and he retreated, I sent over both my units of Southron Warband to help with the flank. And this is going to be the nail in the coffin of Horsey's army, unfortunately. So, paying the price for just retreating, really. I mean, it is Goblin Infantry and Southron Warband, not the best units, but just the fact they're being flanked. They're also being pushed through by Blackwatch Legion and Trolls. Very bad. Very bad for them. And Dar is now advancing forward, but far, far too late. And again, if we look over here, I can actually say what I was thinking. I can't really speak for the others, but what I do like to do is to put an infantry unit in shield wall in front of my pikes, because then my pikes can't be buckled. The added mass of the shield wall should help me. The Serpent Guard won't win any contests against most of the Umbar elite infantry, but with the pike backup, they will hold in the centre, and that will allow me to fight. And over here on the flanks, we can see the Harbingers of Castamere going to be going into battle against the Muhard Berserkers. Of course, the Muhard Berserkers don't stand much of a chance on their own, but I am going to be able to spring my Hashari trap, and I'm going to be able to go round. And we'll see what they can do against the Harbingers of Castamere. Harbingers of Castamere, of course, very expensive. One of the best infantry units against lightly armoured troops in the game at the moment. We can see that in Shield Wall, the Serpent Guard are actually able to push back against the Abrazani Nadu Tariq. But over here on this flank is where my elites are. I've got my Trollmen of Harad backing up these Muhard Berserkers, and these Abrazani Nadu Zagar are not going to be able to stand against this sort of pressure too long. And the Naruna Aru Royal Guard denied the ability to reinforce them by my trash. So we'll see how that goes. The Hashari going up against the Harbingers of Castamere. Meanwhile, over here we can see that once again I was able to get in behind. Thanks to Dar's retreat, I was able to support Crimson's advance. And Crimson honestly probably would have been alright as he was, because he was able to force through the High Elves with his Blackwatch Legion and his Trolls. But this is just going to... The addition of the Southern Warband just means the Elves are going to be even more outnumbered. And if you look over here, the AP of Harad really paying dividends against the Dwarves. The Dwarves just being overrun. The heavy AP polearm presence that WK brought, and he also rushed forwards. And now the Hashari are going to be able to come in. Over here, even the Sons of Durin defeat seems certain, and now the Hashari are going to be getting in. What's going on over on the Elven front there? We can see that the Sylvan Heavy Spearman victory seems certain with the help of the Hashari, so good teamwork there, and that's what's bringing the battle into our favour. So there goes Elrond. And there goes another general, there goes Dane. Very unfortunately for the enemies, their generals are dropping like flies. We can see that the Sylvan Axemen going up against the Sindar Blade Masters. So again, it looks like Kuro. So on all fronts, we are actually winning at this point. And it all came because we were able to really link up in terms of synergy. We had more men to spare. The centre of the High Elves and the Dwarves just didn't have enough men to sort of support their allies. Von Mountain didn't do an awful lot wrong. He did move forward and he did engage, but unfortunately the Umbar player, he left his allies high and dry, and that's what's probably going to decide this fight. The Elder Palace Guard still performing very well as we go back down the line, of course. And that's what's key in this sort of situation, when you support one another. Of course, even in the 1v1s though, it would appear that we are really doing a good job. I mean, over here the Misty Mountains really overwhelmed the High Elves. The Trolls and the Blackwatch Legion simply too much for the Elven front line to bear. And if we look over here, oh, I'm into the cliff wall. How are the Hashari doing? You can see that the Harbingers of Castamere, they did have to fight the Muhad Berserkers, but the Hashari, amazingly, are really holding their own in melee. And this, I really do, I think the Hashari are one of the most underrated units in the current patch. If you can really get them in amongst the enemies. Well, there goes Thranduil, so another general goes down. But the Hashari, if you can get them into sustained melee, they are very good. And you've got to remember, the Harbingers of Castamere are the sort of unit you would imagine to be really good against the Hashari. They're lightly armoured. Harbingers of Castamere, very skillful unit. But the Hashari are able to hold their own, and it really gets worse against units that are good against armour. Against one of the high-tier Dwarven units, the Hashari are able to really do some good work. And if we look over here, his other units of Harbingers were set loose. This unit of Hashari was sandwiched in between Belagir Halberds and Harbingers, but they are still alive and still fighting with the support of these Muhad Berserkers. There goes the Goblin King.
We must look to our own soldiers for victory now.
You can see that my polearm front line, the Serpent Guard, have largely expended themselves on the Halberds and the Abrazani Nadu Tarek.
We are winning the battle.
But my Southron Pikemen are able to hold this front line, and the Southron Pike's really a very good unit, and you can see that over here the Trollmen are starting to overlap, and the Naru and Aru are eventually going to fall by the wayside. And if we look over here, the High Elves all but destroyed. The same fate is meeting the Dwarves. You can see that the Mithril Guard fighting back to back with the Ironfoot Guard. The balance of forces is evenly matched, but with the support of these Trollmen, the AP pikes and spears should be able to see this fight through. And then if we look over on the far side, how is the Elven struggle going? The Woodland Warriors helping out. The Elder Palace Guard are still over here, I would assume. Yeah, still 26 of them. Still victory seems certain when they're completely surrounded, but that will change, because everywhere else Von Mountain's army has, unfortunately for him, been overwhelmed by the more aggressive, focused Lothlorien composition. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty storming victory for us, and this really highlights the need for a bit of teamwork in this sort of situation. In a flat 4v4, taking out one army at a time, you know, a 1v1 on every front is, you know, if you have a gentleman's agreement beforehand to honour those rules, then it's a little bit different. But if you don't, you really need to support your allies, and I think that the retreat of Umbar and the quality over quantity approach of the Dwarves and the High Elves really decided this battle before it really got going. And you can see over here that, to be honest, the fight over on my front is lagging behind because I had to charge forward and sort of chase Umbar a little bit, so his army is still intact a little bit. The Castamere's chosen were doing a pretty good job in the centre, but now the overlapping of these Trollmen is going to cause them some real problems, and they're not going to be able to force their way through the Pikemen. And how's this fight over here going? How are my Desert Assassins getting on? And you can see the Hashari are actually winning this fight. Yes, the Harbingers did take a bit of shock damage from the Muhad Berserkers, and that maybe tilted the fight somewhat in the Hashari's favour. But I still say the Hashari are essentially Sindar Blade Masters for Harad. The Sindar Blade Masters are 100 florins cheaper, I believe, and that does make them more cost effective, and of course the elves in general are better than Harad in the current patch. But even so, I would say the Hashari are one of those hidden gems. I would definitely recommend using them. Harad in general are a faction I've always rather liked. Underdogs most of the time. You can see here that WK is also sending his Hashari in, so I imagine that Dar is sick of the sight of them at the moment, but now a rear charge onto these Abrazani Nadu Tarek. This is going to be the final nail in Umbar's coffin. Meanwhile, if we look over here, what is going on? These Elder Palace Guard are still fighting. So Kuro is essentially having to commit just unit after unit after these guys. And there goes Castamere, dead at the hands of the Trollman. There are the Elder Palace Guard though, still fighting. Definitely the strongest infantry unit in the game as it stands, but they'll probably be toned down a little bit in the next patch. I would still imagine them to be one of the strongest infantry units, but we can see Sylvan Silver Spears, more Sylvan Axemen, and they're now falling by the wayside. They're just completely overwhelmed. How are things going here in the middle? Any elite dwarves still left? Well, kind of. No, just got destroyed. The High Elves are all destroyed, so back over to my front, as it were. We have what remains of the Umbar front line, and honestly not much of it remains now that they're being charged in the rear. Hammer and anvil against the AP pikes. Things are going very poorly. How are the... And there we can see the Blackback Berserkers. We didn't see them all battle actually, but here they are. Probably the most deadly of all the units that can hide in the current patch. We can see that the Naru Naaru Royal Guard fighting to the death against all of these low tier spears. The Harajam spears actually did a pretty decent job against them, all in all. They were able to... The Naru Naaru Royal Guard didn't manage to get into a really set formation, and that did count against them, but yeah, this is it. Umbar admit defeat. I believe this leaves just a couple of units of High Elves here in the centre. You can see these Elder Enway spears are fighting to the death. What's going on over here? Southron pikemen are marching. Well, we've come to the end anyway. We can actually see some Forest Blazemen from Von Mountain routing throughout the field. But yeah, pretty one-sided for the first round.
Righteous and well deserved. It cannot be said otherwise.
And I think that the enemy's compositions did play into our hands. We were able to really leverage our numbers. And this shows the benefits of quantity over quality. I do think that the elites in the current patch are probably the way to go. But in this sort of situation, being able to get round the flanks is all important, and being able to force your way through with numbers. So yeah, that was a pretty one-sided fight. You can actually see, though, that the enemy did manage to get more kills every single way, except Von Mountain. Von Mountain managed to get fewer kills, but that's only because Kuro, of course, was the Elves. The other three players managed to get more kills, but again, their quality armies just were not able to withstand the numbers. And yeah, it was a very interesting fight. The second of the two fights that I'm going to show now is closer, and there is more of the teamwork angle that I want to talk about with that one. So let's move on to the second fight, I think. So now for the second of the battles, and mercifully the sand is less luminous this time, so I have been able to turn the brightness up a little bit again. And this time I decided to go for a different approach. I can only really speak from my thinking during the battle, of course, but this time I decided, instead of going wide with maybe a little bit more pikes in the middle and then trying to get in and around, I decided I'd just try and smash through up front with going around one flank most of my elite forces. And I'm playing as Dol Amroth, of course, and I've got my general in a unit of Haven Guard, and I've got 2 units of Talon Knights on this flank, so I really wanted to go in hard on this side and hopefully smash through with all my hit points and all of my armour. And also I've got my Edelhond Halberdiers over here to follow them in, to really add to that armour piercing, well, really add that armour piercing to that attack. And obviously they're very strong, strongest Halberdiers in the game right now because of the fact they use the pikeman animation. So yeah, they should do very well depending on who I'm fighting, but we'll get to them in a minute. In the middle I've got a full complement of Dol Amroth men-at-arms. These guys should be pretty good at holding the line up front against most factions. They'll do pretty poorly against the dwarves, but they should be robust enough to handle most of what comes at them, and they won't buckle straight away under pretty much anything in this sort of situation, of course, because it is the same rules as last time, of course, infantry only, melee infantry only, and we're on the dry lake bed. Backing them up though, just in case they do start to struggle, I've got 2 units of Tirithea Wardens, so multiple HP spears. They'll hold for a decent amount of time, and then over here, holding the other flank down, I've got 2 units of regular Swan Knights. They won't really win any contest, but they will at least hold the line. And backing them up, I've got a unit of Dol Amroth Swords Militia, because that was all I could afford. My direct opponent is the High Elves, played by Starling. He's got a full front line of Sword Quindy, so my Dol Amroth men-at-arms should be pretty good against them. The Sword Quindy are pretty lightweight, but overall in terms of killing power, both units are pretty even, based on the amount of men in the unit and all that. So we also have the Falas Lords here in the middle, holding down the centre. I won't be able to punch through them, of course, not in Shield Wall, with anything short of my best units. Over on this flank he's got a couple of units of Storm Raiders, which is a little concerning for my Talon Knights, but they should still be able to get the job done. And then he's also got some Mithlon Nobles here, decent heavy infantry units. He's got a full complement of Elder Enway Swordsmen. Again, they could be a bit of a problem because of their melee skill. He's also got Smiths of Eregion, and somewhere around here he's also got some Sindar Blade Masters. So yeah, he's got all of the High Elves' best stuff really, except for maybe the Imladris Guards. A unit of Imladris Guards to hold down the front might have been what was called for, but we'll see, because you know, in an infantry-only engagement, pikes can be very strong indeed. And over here, his direct ally, we have Dar, playing as Umbar once again. This time he's taken a much more wide approach, which is probably wise considering what happened in the last game. He's got Castamir's Chosen and Harbingers. He's also got the Naru Naaru Royal Guard. And he too has brought pikemen this time. He's got a full complement of Corsair pikemen here along the front line. They're very cheap, but they will still get the job done, mostly if they're backed up. He's also got a lot of armour piercing, which will be good if he's up against an armoured faction, which he is. So he's got a lot of Corsair Savages, and he's also got all of his Abrazanim Back here, the Nadu Tariq and the Nardu Zagar. And I believe that is it. He's also got more Harbingers and Castamirs chosen on the other side. So, his direct opponent and my direct ally is the Elder playing as the Dwarves. So all of that armor piercing should come in handy for Umbar. He's got Ironfoot Warriors and Ironfoot Pikemen holding down the front line. A very good synergy there in this sort of engagement. He's got more Ironfoot Warriors there. And then back here is his elite corps. He's got Mithril Guard, 2 units of Erebor Infantry and Sons of Durin, of course, and the Dwarven Noblemen. But as we saw in the last game, having a smaller army isn't necessarily a good thing. Even the Dwarven Infantry is liable to getting surrounded. So we'll see how that goes, if the quality is able to really stand up to the pressure that Umbar will put onto them. And then over here, our next ally is Volker, playing as Gondor, another infantry heavy faction. Hopefully they'll be able to do some good work here. He's got some Gondorian winged swordsmen, he's also got some Gondorian spearmen, and along the front line he's got all of his Fountain Guard and his pikemen, so all of his pole arms going to be holding down the front line, which is going to be pretty good. They should be able to hold against most things. And over here he's got more Citadel Guard. He's also got the very snazzy looking Sons of Argonath. Very cool unit indeed. Very, very similar to the Haven Guard. Haven Guard are probably slightly better, but still very, very good. His general is in a unit of Wardens of the White Tower, and then down here he's got more Gondorian infantry and the Lasarnak nobles on the flank. Unfortunately for him though, he's got the most daunting challenge because his direct opponent is Bobo playing as Gundabad, and Gundabad in this sort of situation is almost like easy mode because what makes them so strong is their sheer amount of elite infantry. And they've got Orc Fellas, which is not elite infantry, but over here we have, in my opinion, one of the most cost-effective units in the game at the moment, the Rudal Berserkers. All of that AP damage, those hit points, and in conjunction with one of the other most cost-effective heavy infantry units, the Guardians of Khan Doom. Classic running mates, these two, and they will do a very good job here on this flank. There's not much that Gondor can do to stop them, short of putting their most elite forces there. He's also got Witch Realm Pikes combined with Orc Marauders on the front line, so AP combined with Pikes. He's also got some Black Uruk Warband to pad out his line back here. He's also got 2 units of Scourge Raiders, and without the presence of any archers of any sort, these guys are going to be able to lay down their full damage. And then he's got the Witch Realm Hammers and the Witch Realm Blackguard, of course, very, very strong indeed. And then over on this flank, a little bit less elite, he's got 2 units of Halberdiers instead of the Rudal Berserkers, but he has got the Guardians of Khan Doom still. Finally, for our team, we have Arnor, played by WK. He's got some dismounted Dunedain Knights, some dismounted Arthedain Knights. He's also got some Arthedain Men-at-Arms here along the front line, along with some Arnorian Peacekeepers and Arnor Pikemen. Interesting sort of blocks to his formation here, and in the centre he's got the Arnor Gate Guards, backed up by the battle-ready Dunedain and some Arnor Militia in the back. And then it's pretty much the same thing on the other side, very organised formation indeed, and dismounted Dunedain Knights and Arthedain Knights. He will be facing off directly against, of course, oh, not the cliff, Kuro Guro-chan, who is going to be playing as Isengard. He's in this sort of valley a little bit, but he will be able to spread out pretty quickly as Isengard. He's got several units of Uruk-hai Raiders, the chaff of his army, as it were, and also the centrepiece of most Isengard armies are their pikemen. They should be able to do a pretty good job, but Arnor, of course, have got very good pikes of their own in the current patch, so we'll see how that engagement goes. And the Uruk-hai infantry, of course, going to be able to go up against the Arthedain Men-at-Arms and probably win that engagement. We also have the Nazkai in there. You can see Saruman, and he's also got the Nazkai bodyguard over here. So the strongest of the Isengard infantry is here, of course. There's no trolls though. There is a lot more raiders here in the back, and he's also got some berserkers over here. So pretty classic army here. And as we can see, WK has deployed a little bit further back than us, so the engagement over here will be a little bit, well, take longer to get into it than the engagements on the other front, presumably. Although Gondor is quite content to wait. I, on the other hand, wanted to charge forward almost immediately, so my full army is on the move straight away. And as I was saying, teamwork is sort of the theme of the day, and unfortunately my ally was kind of lagging behind me a little bit, and that does leave me very open to Umbar sending some reinforcements over to his High Elven buddies, and that's going to be pretty bad for me, because obviously I can't really take on 2 forces at once. We can see that the engagement is going to clash here. Bit of a frame rate drop as they do. But the Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms should win this frontal engagement. It's the High Elven elites that I should be worried about. Over here I also spotted an opportunity to overlap these Sword Quindi, get these Talon Knights into the side, and the Sword Quindi should start to fall apart pretty quickly without any reinforcements over here. Also sending up the Tirithea Wardens, because of course the Falas Lords are on the front line. I didn't spot these guys at the start of the battle, so I needed the Tirithea Wardens to be here just to bog them down a little bit. And if we look over here, Mithlon Nobles trying to get into the Talon Knights forming a front line. Sindar Blade Master's coming over here though, and this is really the problem that I will have. The Sindar Blade Master, similar to the Hashari, so I'm not going to be able to punch through them as quickly as I would have wanted, but the Haven Guard and the Halberdiers should be able to do it still. And if we look over here, we can see, unfortunately for me, Umbar is sending over some elite forces in the Naru Royal Guard, and that's going to be bad news for my dismounted Swan Knights. My ally really needs to get his hustle on if I'm going to have much success. Meanwhile, if we look over here, the engagement between Arnor and Isengard, the posturing has begun. Meanwhile, Gundabad and Gondor staring each other down. We shall see how this goes. You can see, of course, Isengard going to be leading the way, well, at least getting their pikemen into position. The key to Isengard's success here is really going to be their pikes, because in terms of varied elite infantry, Arnor does have the advantage there. The Berserkers and the Nazkai are very solid, but I do think that ultimately a lot of these raiders are not going to do a particularly fantastic job going up against a lot of these well-armoured Arnorian units. You can see that these Arnor Gate Guards coming forward, and these Uruk-hai raiders going around the flank here as well. So Kuro is trying to use his numbers, which is the correct thing to do. He's trying to envelop his foe, and you can see these Arnor militia, but the clash is happening. You can see that these Isengard infantry hitting the Arthedain man-at-arms, and if these pikemen can reinforce them quickly enough, it's going to be a very grindy fight here on this front line. I'm not sure who would win. Probably Arnor here in the middle, simply because of the battle-ready Dunedain and the Arnor Gate Guards. But elsewhere it might be a little bit more even, although these Arnorian peacekeepers burrowing into this pike formation. You can see that the Arnorians trying to envelop on the other side, so it's going to be an interesting watch to see how that transpires. Gundabad and Gondor still haven't really engaged yet. Gondor sort of allowing Gundabad to envelop him, which is going to be pretty bad, I think, for us anyway. You can see that the full engagement has happened. The dwarves have now engaged, but you can see, if we just pull back a little bit, you can see that the crescent moon has got the dwarves on the inside, which is never what you want to see. It means that you're being surrounded and bad times are going to be had by you. And if we just move in, you can see that my Swan Knights have been ripped apart while the dwarves were kind of dragging their heels getting into the fight, which is a little bit unfortunate for me. These Mithril Guard are now here, but they're not going to be enough anymore because my Swan Knights are so depleted. Meanwhile, if we do go down the line though, I'm having a lot more luck elsewhere. The Sword Quindi are starting to fall apart in places. The Storm Raiders have had to be committed to sort of shore up the line. At this point, what I probably should have done is try to force my way through the line with my much more heavy mass troops. But I didn't really want to do that because it did also leave me open to being crushed by elite infantry. And I can't really afford to take too much in the way of losses because of the engagement I've chosen. It's not really too good for me. And you can see that my foe is actually doing this. He's trying to burrow his way through the Halberdiers. He's going to be taking some losses on the way through, but he will be able to do that. You can see that my elites here, slowly but surely, going to be cutting their way through these Sindar Blade Masters, but it's the Dwarven front where I worry. Because you can see that all of these troops, it's not looking too great for the dwarves. You know, Umbar, the Bouncer Forces is evenly matched where the Dwarven elites are, but where the Ironfoot Warriors are, the Corsair Savages and the Abrazanim put together are doing a very good job. There's good synergy there, and also the Corsair Pikemen, of course. If we go back down the line, however, we shall see that the engagement between Gundabad and Isengard has finally got underway. Surprised it didn't get underway sooner, to be honest with you, because Gundabad's charge is something that very few can withstand. These pikes are facing the wrong way. But yeah, Gundabad here are just going to be able to smash their way through Gondor, to be honest with you. There's not really much you can do in this sort of situation against Gundabad. They're going to be very, very strong. Even Gondor, with their supposedly very strong infantry corps, are going to be no match for Gundabad. You can see that Gondor spearmen doing their best. There are Snaga mixed in here. You can see there's also a lot of gaps in the Gondorian line where Gundabad are going to be able to sort of filter their way through and around his defences. Black Uruk Warband. Let's see what's going on.
We've lost half of our men.
Over in the Arnor versus Isengard fight. We can see that Arnor have made some headway over here. They've started to push through a little bit. Uruk-hai Raiders making their presence felt on this line, but you can see that in many places it seems like Arnor have managed to sort of force their way through the Isengard line, and the pikes, if the Isengard pikes were not able to get their sort of pikes facing the enemy, and if they were flanked, it was always going to be a very tough ask for Isengard to win this fight. You see that these Berserkers sort of trying to pull away. They're going to be engaged by the Peacekeepers. Yeah, it looks like the Isengard pike line is kind of folded in several places, which is very bad for Kuro, unfortunately.
Our men have slain the enemy general.
There goes Elrond there.
Without him, his
That's good for
troops will
me.
lose their will to fight.
We can see that these Uruk-hai Raiders trying their best, but against Arthedain Knights they don't stand much of a chance. These Arnor militia are wavering. You can see that back here the battle-ready Dunedain carving their way through the raiders, and you can see that while Isengard do have the advantage in terms of numbers, these raiders are just not able to defeat any unit one-to-one other than the Arnor militia, and that's bad for Isengard. See, the Arnor pikemen are really struggling. The Arnor gate guards are going to be able to get in and around as well. Again, one of the things that I would say is Arnor pikemen and Uruk-hai pikemen have always been quite similar in every iteration of Third Age that I've seen, with Uruk-hai pikemen mostly having the edge, but I would say in the current patch of Reforged,
we must help his men avenge him.
the Arnor pikemen do have the advantage, but there goes the Arnorian general, so we'll see if Kuro can make that count. The Berserkers are tearing apart those Peacekeepers, but they are keeping those. Well, there goes my general as well, so 1 for 1 over on my front. Those Peacekeepers are just holding those Berserkers in place, but now the Gate Guards are coming forward. And you can see that here in the centre, Arnor was able to really smash their way through the Isengard lines. There's Saruman, and you see the Nazkai are actually completely overwhelmed at this point, being attacked by dismounted Dunedain Knights. The Nazkai bodyguard over here, balance of forces is even. Nazkai bodyguard do need support if they're able to, or if they want to get their full potential out onto the battlefield. These Uruk-hai raiders though, their numbers are starting to pay dividends over on this flank, so not all is lost for Isengard right now. If we go back down the line, we can see that the Witch-Realm Hammerguard and the Guardians of Khan Doom are busy tearing their way through the Gondorian line. Over here, the Witch-Realm Blackguard are going to be able to get through, and the Sons of Argonath are basically all that's left holding the line over here. And over here you can see that Gondor really struggling to keep their army together. Meanwhile, if we look back over here, you can see that the dwarves, still this crescent moon, but it's getting thinner, and that's bad for the dwarves. Of course, the lower numbers, these Mithril Guard are trying to hold the line, but without the support of my Swan Knights, which were killed too quickly, the Castamere units should be enough to deal with them. And also now, the Sons of Durin and what's left of my men-at-arms that were over here are having to deal with the Harbingers and a unit of Eldarenway Swordsmen that's flanking around. And you can see that several of my units on this flank are breaking. And I'm going to have to send over a Tirithea Wardens, but I have been able to push through the line in several places, which does mean that it's kind of even between me and the High Elves, but the problem is, the fly in the ointment is the fact that some Umbar units are over here as well, which is going to be a real problem for me. These Halberdiers trying to hold back these Sindar Blade Masters. You can see that the Smiths did push their way through the line, but I am engaging them with Haven Guard, which means the losses they took pushing their way through the line is going to be terminal for them. So the Smiths are going to be destroyed. It is quite an even fight between myself and Starling at this point, but this is going to be a bit of a problem over here. The Falas Lords have been able to hold down this centre, and a lot of my troops have been caught from them. And again, I've been uncomplimentary of this unit in the past, but if there's one thing they're very good at, it's standing and not dying. They don't do much damage at all, but they are very good at staying alive. There goes Castamere at the hands of the dwarves. See these Storm Raiders really getting into the faces of my men. You can see that with these Eldarenway Swordsmen we've got a real problem. I've only managed to get one unit of Dol Amrul's men-at-arms free, and Eldarenway Swordsmen are a significantly better unit than they are. Harbingers of Castamere, these Sons of Durin don't stand a chance, and yeah, the eliteness of the dwarves is not really going to pay dividends here because Umbar was able to surround them. And this time, when Dar was aggressive, he managed to really help his team. And over here we can see that what's left of Gondor is just being crushed by the savage infantry force of Gundabad. Meanwhile, if we look over here again, it's turned into a bit of a mess over here as well. The neat formations of yesteryear have completely evaporated in favour of just an outright brawl. But you can see here that Isengard have largely been dealt with. So WK is really the only one that has been able to win his fight. The two fights in the centre went heavily in favour of the enemy team, and over on my flank I wasn't able to smash through like I should have been able to be honest with you. With all that Quindy, I should have been able to smash through the centre, but I wasn't really able to. Instead it was only really an even engagement, and now Umbar is going to really hasten my demise. You can see here these Nazkai. That was a brutal death at the hands of the battle-ready Dunedain. Saruman over here getting cut down by the Dunedain. And the Arnor Gate Guard. So yeah, Isengard largely been dealt with, but of course, at this point, WK is not going to have anywhere near enough to deal with the onslaught that Gundabad is going to deliver. You can see that the Scourge Raiders are already cresting the hill. And if we look at the percentages, you can see that we're 12% behind, which is bad. It's Arthedain Man-at-Arms. He's got a lot of pikes, but that's not going to be enough to kill the elites of Gundabad. Gundabad forming up Orc Marauders, Guardians of Khan Doom. Yeah, Gondor will just fly over them because they've got basically nothing left.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Meanwhile, if we look over here, a lot of these Abrazanim still alive. Corsair Savages doing a very good job as well. There goes Kuro's general. If we look here, the Abrazanim Nadu Tariq, victory seems certainty. In the last match, these guys weren't really able to shine against Harad, but against the dwarves, exactly the sort of engagement they like with their little clubs.
Something changes in the course of battle, for defeat seems almost certain.
Again, now defeat seems certain for the Erebor infantry and the dwarven noblemen. There's still a decent amount of Corsair pikemen left alive, still a decent amount of savages left alive, and considering they usually burn out pretty quickly, it's an impressive way that Dar crafted his line, I think. He really mixed his troops well, and the synergies were dead on. And the slowness of the dwarves was taken advantage of very nicely. So, good play by him this time. He redeemed himself for his last battle. And we can see the Haven Guard here. After dealing with the Smiths of Aragian, I'm going to try and deal with this unit of Elder Enway Swordsmen and relieve this Haggard unit of Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms. You can see that I'm really trying to sort of affect something here in the centre, but there are still Falas Lords alive, 22 of them. And now they're backed up by Storm Raiders, and really most of what I have left is just Men-at-Arms. The Halberdiers will do a decent job, but you can see that I'm also having to deal with these Harbingers over here. And Harbingers are no joke. Definitely one of the strong units. See these Sindar Blade Masters able to get a nice rear charge on me. They are exhausted, but this is going to cause, I think, a bit of a break here. You can see that most of my troops are wavering. And yeah, they're broken. They're fighting to the death. I'm trying to get these other unit of Halberdiers in, but of course Halberdiers, they're not exactly known for their swiftness of getting into battle. But yeah, things are looking pretty poor over here. If we look back, we can see WK is sort of trying to get into this valley position, I think, to try and escape the clutches of Gundabad as they close in on him. There's still Snaga left alive, but you can see that Gundabad on hand to block this escape route, the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. And the Scourge Raiders are going to be able to engage these battle-ready Dunedain. Battle-ready Dunedain not overly reliant on their armour, but they don't have enough left to deal with this many Scourge Raiders. And you can see at this point it's going to be a bit of a square pike formation, I think. Come on! They are in loose though. So interestingly enough, the battle-ready Dunedain will be able to slowly cut their way through. Any reinforcements coming on this side? Well no, but it looks like the Scourge Raider is going to engage. Get up into the face of these Arnor Gate Guards, and then the crush will happen. Oof. Let's go see what's happening with the dwarves. And yeah, you can see that the dwarves with the Naru and Aru Royal Guard, they're basically slowly going down the line, munching what's left of the dwarves. And yeah, the dwarves a bit too slow really, and if they had supported my advance and managed and run into battle like I had done, they probably still would have been overwhelmed, but with the support of my Swan Knights on that flank, you probably wouldn't have been broken in that section so quickly. And that might have allowed myself to sort of break through the elves, and then the opposite would be happening here rather than what's happening right now. And again, sometimes the smallest things can decide battles like this, and you can see that the Umbar player is sort of heading towards the cluster of my troops that is remaining. If we go back over to where WK's line is at, well, there goes Dane. In that cluster of Corsairs, you can see that all of these pikes, all the pikes in the world are not going to be enough to hold back the tide here. The Guardians of Khandu, Snaga, and the Witch Realm Blackguard still basically completely healthy. There's also the Hammer Guardsmen over here. And yeah, when pikes are not able to keep their formation intact, you can see the Guardians of Khandu bulldozing their way through the depleted Arnor Gate Guards, and they're wavering actually. In the face of all of these elite orcs, they're now wavering, they're broken. You see there are actually Nazkai Bodyguard over here. But yeah, the Nazkai were not really, they're not really numerous, they weren't really numerous enough to really make their presence felt against the push that Arnor had, and I think the way that he pushed through the pikes, WK, was quite nice. He managed to sort of circumvent the strength of Gundabad's front line, which I do quite like. But yeah, with the help of these Nazkai Bodyguard, the Gundabad player is just going to sweep Arnor from the field, and that, I think, basically leaves what's left of my army, which is not long for this world, because really all I have left are the Haven Guard.
Have fled the field like cowards.
And to be honest with you, the Haven Guard are not going to be sufficient to win this. I've also got a small cluster of Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms over here. And with all of these Corsair Savages, all of this AP coming in, I've also got the Abrazanim Nadu Tarek. The Phalos Lords still alive, still 15 of them, holding firm in the centre, doing their job. And also these Harbingers. Yeah, here come the Black Numenorians. This is going to be the end. I might as well speed it up to ×2 speed. And we can see the last stand of the Haven Guard. The Abrazanim Narduzagar also getting involved, wanting a piece of this action. The Haven Guard won't go down easily, but go down they will in this situation. Dolan, Roth and Umbar, classic enemies. In the current patch, Dolan, Roth are significantly better than they are, I think, when everything is taken into account. But I do hope that in the next patch, Umbar will really become more viable, because I do like their style, and all things considered, in this sort of situation, in infantry only fight, they can definitely do some heavy lifting. They managed to beat the dwarves, but I do believe that, all things considered, they're certainly one of the weaker factions at the moment, which is a real shame. I do hope that they increase in power in the next patch, because I'd like to play as Umbar a little more often and have some success. You can see in this situation, they and the High Elves able to wipe away. Myself and Starling basically ground our armies up against one another. The High Elves certainly don't have all that much left. Without the support of Umbar, I think it would have been a mutually assured destruction kind of deal. What is he doing? Pulling one of his men out of there. But I do believe that this is the end of the battle, and I do believe someone actually crashed at the end. So we won't actually be able to see the kills, but the kills don't really matter. It's basically the same as the last game, where it's going to be quite even. Everyone really pulling their weight. Only Gondor, I think, would have been crushed, because of course Gundabad is basically like playing on easy mode. Shame on Bobo for picking Gundabad in this situation. But yeah, this was an interesting little thing. It's nice to have the infantry in a field battle be used in like their formations and such, because of course trying to make a sort of neat formation infantry advance in the current patch is kind of fruitless, because they're just going to be shot to death by very powerful archers and charged by very powerful cavalry, which kind of defeats the whole point of doing that in the first place. So infantry is more sort of a sacrificial part of your army more often than not in an open field like this, at least when there's no rules attributed. So yeah, it was nice to see this. I don't know what's coming next. I believe maybe WK has made a map, which I hope to be a part of. The Southron Temple, I think it's called, which should be interesting. But if not, it will probably be another Horton scenario that I've got waiting in the wings. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for that.